Alright boys, how's it going? It's the Lone Courier here. So I've been playing through the Gears of War series recently with my girlfriend, and Gears 5 is the last game that we finished, so I felt like making a wee bit of a video about it just to talk about the Gears 5 campaign. Mainly just due to the fact that I didn't post anything about Gears 5 when it first came out, so it's kind of a case of I've not really spoke about the campaign of the game. I spoke about the multiplayer. I made videos on Gears of War 4's campaign, but I've not touched Gears 5 yet. So in all honesty, I enjoyed the Gears 5 campaign. Like, there's really good parts of it, and there's some really bad parts of it as well. So I enjoyed the fact that they addressed some of the things that they mentioned in Gears 4. Like, there's a lot of stuff that were in Gears 4 that they never elaborated much on. Like Anya's death in the game. It was off screen, which is a wee bit disappointing when you've got a major character from all of the Gears of War games previously, and then suddenly they die in the new one, but they didn't even die in the game. It's just said that they died at some point before the game started, and it's like, oh well, that's a wee bit disappointing. But they elaborated more upon her death in Gears 5, and it was nice to delve a wee bit into Kate's backstory with this game as well, which was something that they kind of hinted at the end of Gears 4, so it was cool that they set up for this game. But there's some things that they could have done better with Kate's backstory, but more or less they just showed off how she's connected to Queen Mira and the Locust Horde. It's cool to see New Hope again in Gears of War 5, which was a key location from Gears of War 2. And well, they bring back some old locations in this game, because it's not just New Hope, there's one or two other familiar locations in this game as well. But in all honesty, most other games, when they bring back old locations and campaigns, I find it to be a little bit tacky. Sometimes it's a wee bit on the nose. Sometimes they do it well, but like for the most part, most games they do it, and it's quite boring to see old locations come back and it's a wee bit recycled. But they managed to have it make perfect sense in the game. They managed to make it tie in perfectly with the story. As I said, they made it cool as well. Like, they added new locations into New Hope that we didn't actually see in Gears of War 2, like locations that were previously unexplored in New Hope. They explained the backstory a wee bit more as to the experiments that were going on involving the emulsion in New Hope, because that was one thing in Gears 2 that they kind of touched on a wee bit, but they never really expanded much more upon it. And there was a lot of like lore and stuff with the Gears of War series that you could find online that tells you a lot more about the experiments that they were doing at New Hope, but the games never really tell you all that much about it. So it is cool to finally find out about it in a mainline Gears of War game rather than having to go off and find the lore yourself. So that's pretty cool. There was a bunch of weird stuff going on, and for being a big time fan of the series, like, I've been playing Gears of War since Gears 2, and I've played every single game since then. I've played every single Gears game in the series, but it's cool to see that they're 5 games deep in the series and that they're still managing to come out with new stuff, which is pretty interesting. Anyway, there's a few gripes I have got about the game. There's not enough variety in enemy types in this game, which is one of the bigger problems that I've actually got with the game. The Swarm are cool enemy types, but there isn't enough of them, which is probably my biggest problem with it. There's a lot of the same enemy types from Gears 4. There's the snipers, there's the drones, there's the grenadiers, which have went over a wee bit of an overhaul in this game, where they've got helmets on, so you need to one-shot their helmet off and then go for a headshot or whatever way you take them out. So it's cool that they've managed to add in different types of the same enemies, but at the same time there's not new enemy types in this game. Well, there's a couple of them, but there's not enough anyway, especially for just normal infantry type enemies. There's not enough variety in those guys. There's been concept art that's been released for the game since it launched of Flamers and Flame Grenadiers for the Swarm, and that would have been really cool to see those guys in the game. It would have been a nice addition to the enemy types. They could have had a wee bit of variety. And there's also another enemy type that just isn't in this game, which would be nice to see, and that would be like a healer type enemy, which the Cantus in the original Gears of War games, well, Gears 2, Gears 3, the Cantus was an enemy type where when any drones or other enemies were down but not out, the Cantus would do this weird animation and it would revive all of them on the field at once, which made it a wee bit more difficult on the higher difficulties. It added a wee bit of variety in how you take down enemies as well, so you need to sort of prioritise the Cantus first and then go for the other big enemies that are there and then finish up with the drones. But there's not really any of those in this game. There is the Scions in Gears 4. I mean, I haven't really noticed the Scions do it in Gears 5, but they do give the enemies a wee bit of a health/damage buff, which is cool, but at the same time it's a big heavy enemy, whereas in Gears Act 2 and 3 they had the Cantus, which was sort of more of a light enemy that done healing, and then they had the big enemies as well, rather than having Gears 4 and 5 where they have one big enemy that does both. It'd be nice to see a wee bit more variety in them, but overall it doesn't exactly ruin the game because they've not got much of a variety in the enemy types. It's just something that they could genuinely improve upon for Gears 6. There's another kind of major complaint that I have got about the game that does kind of drag it down a wee bit for me, and that's definitely the fact that there is 2 open world acts in this game. The open world portions of this game are pretty frustrating for me personally. I'm not a big fan of them. They just kind of drag out the runtime a wee bit more than it actually needs to go on. There's big missions in the open world levels which are pretty cool, which could do with being in there, but at the same time they could do with shrinking the open world areas a lot more. In all honesty, it's more just a case of they made these big open world levels and it's taken up way too much of the game's content, because the campaign doesn't feel like it goes on for too long. It's got these big acts in the middle of the game, and because they're all in one area, it just makes the game feel shorter as a result, because you're honestly just in one kind of setting the entire time. Like Act 2, where you're hiking through, well, you're not hiking through, you're skiffing through the Mount Kadar region looking for New Hope, and you're looking for different stuff in that area, like you're looking for grind lift parts. There's a bunch of side missions that you can do. There's outsider side missions as well, or you can just crack through and do the entire main quest line if you really want to. The open world levels, they're cool because they give you a wee bit of variety in what you want to do and what order you want to do them in, but at the same time it's like they just drag on way too much, and by the time you finish the 2 of them you're already on the last act of the game, and then the last act of the game doesn't feel that long either. So it's a case of feeling like it is the shortest Gears game in the entire series, which is a wee bit frustrating because it's, in all honesty, in terms of playtime, it's probably not the shortest. I'd say Gears UE is probably the shortest, even with the additional chapters that they put in that game. But at the same time, it does feel shorter to me, just because you're in one location for a big portion of the game, and then you're in another location for another big portion of it. It's just a wee bit frustrating. It's no my cup of tea. I don't really like seeing open world games all that much. I like playing them, don't get me wrong. Fallout is one of my favourite game franchises of all time. I recently got my hands on Ghost Recon Breakpoint as well, so I'll be playing that soon. But my issue with it is more like open world games have just kind of become a template at this point. Like Ubisoft are a great example. Like they've basically just got an open world template for all of their games, and they just basically copy paste the next game into that setting. It's a wee bit frustrating because like all their games are open world, and it just kind of feels like, well, how are your games actually different from the last one when your next game is open world as well? It's just basically shoot, loot, repeat, and it's not what I really want from Gears of War. You know, like I hope more linear missions are in the next game. I mean, I don't mind it if it's just going to be a Gears 5 exclusive kind of thing, where Gears 5 is the only game that experiments with open world levels, because I said it can be cool at times, but I don't want to see it in the next game, because it's like, at this point, right, when you think about how the story is meant to be progressing, Gears 4 is the introduction to the Swarm enemy threat, and basically with the Swarm in Gears 4, they're not a presence when the game starts, they're only just starting to emerge as the game progresses, so nobody really knows what they are, and they're just becoming a new threat. And then in Gears 5, it's a case of, right, people are starting to know what the Swarm are now, they're starting to get a bit of a foothold on Sarah, and it's getting a bit of a problem. By the end of the game, it's basically all out war, and so for the next game, it basically is kind of the Gears 2 free fight for humanity's survival kind of style, and that is what I hope that they do with the next game. I hope that it is just all out warfare for the entire game. I'm not saying that I want the game to be shooting from the moment the game starts to the moment the credits roll. I hope that there are slow missions in Gears 6 that kind of let you catch a breath, that have some cool things to look at, but at the same time it needs to kind of have a bit more speed, a wee bit more faster paced action in the next game, just to kind of make up for, you know, because I don't know what they're going to do with Gears, right? I don't know if the Coalition are planning to have Gears 9 like go on and make another trilogy after Gears 6. Like they could do. With the way the Swarm are going, they're a pretty ever-present threat, considering the fact that it is basically just the Locust incarnate, because the Locust died from the emulsion counter weapon and suddenly they came back better than ever, and like with the way that they transform into the Swarm in Gears 4, like it just kind of shows you that you thought they were dead, they're just going to come back, and it doesn't really matter what you do unless you put down all the Swarm. But then again, there's the juvies, there's the pods and stuff, so it kind of means that they've got a cycle of repeating itself. So I don't know if they are actually going to have Gears 6 be a definitive end to the franchise. I really don't think they will. I think they'll find a way to make it go on into Gears 7, 8 and 9. I mean, who knows, it might be cool to see that, but at the same time it's like, with the way they're going with this trilogy right now, they need to have a definitive end point, and if they're going to keep it going, then it kind of needs to have a wee bit of a decent ending to it, so I don't know what they're going to do with it. But at the same time, I can appreciate a break from the usual linear style with these open world levels. Like, I mean, it's cool to have a wee bit of a break and to have moments where you're not getting shot at the entire time, which is, it's cool, but at the same time, it's more like, I feel like the landscape's a bit bland and it's not really all that interesting to me personally. Personally, as I said, I would rather see a traditional story in Gears 6. In all honesty, it's interesting to see what they've done with the game, but like the game, as I said, it just ends way too short. Like the open world levels take up way too much of the game's width, like in terms of how long it is. So I feel like the game really could benefit from having a couple story DLCs. I don't know how possible that actually is at this point, with the entire world going into lockdown, and it means that every developer is working from home at the current moment. I don't know if they are actually working from the studio. You assume that perhaps maybe they could work with some kind of social distancing guidelines going on at their game studios, but at the same time, they're just game developers. They're not essential. Like, I don't care what you've got to say. Like, they are essential for video games, but at the same time, when it comes to keeping people safe, fed, watered, etc, etc, they're not essential workers. So you've got to assume that they are still just working from home, collecting some fat overtime paychecks, but they're working from home right now. So I don't know if they actually have the ability to work on a story DLC from home. I don't think they would, but in all honesty, I think this game really could benefit from having some story DLCs just to expand upon it a wee bit more. Like, that's really what I like to see them do with this game, just to kind of pad out the ending a wee bit, because the ending, as I said, is abrupt. It just kind of ends out of nowhere. Like, I finished the game with my girlfriend and she was just kind of sitting there like, yo, what? Is that it? Like, seriously, is that it? Is that the game over? Like, no way, because it just kind of ends like, boom, done, that's it. And it's a wee bit of a slap in the face. Like, I don't know, man, it's not the worst ending ever, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, yo, what the fuck? Like, why did this game end so suddenly? But yeah, that's kind of all I've really got to criticise when it comes to the ending of the campaign. There's one more kind of note that I want to make before I end off this video, and that is the Matriarch boss fight. Oh my goodness, man. The Matriarch boss fight, I've got a bunch of footage I'm going to roll right now to show you how bad this boss fight actually is. Now, this boss fight infuriated the living daylights out of me. Now I'm going to say right now that I played this campaign halfway through once already with my girlfriend, and we got to the Matriarch boss fight and we actually both just rage quitted the game. We were like, right, no, done with this game, no playing it again, until we got back to it on Gears 5 after Gears 4. And it was still insanely broken the last time we played it, dude. Like, I don't know if this is something the Coalition will ever fix, but look at this, man. The fact that the cutscene starts and the Matriarch isn't even present in the cutscene is a way off on another path. And just some of the times where the Matriarch one shot kills you out of absolute nowhere. It is insane, dude, and it's hard to even judge where it's going to jump, right? Now, I know that the Matriarch is meant to just kind of be in the style of the Berserker from Gears of War 1, right? Now, I played Gears of War UE recently, as I said, because I played the whole series through. And when it comes down to the Berserkers in Gears of War 1, they are incredibly well designed. There is not a single moment in Gears 1 where the Berserkers are bullshit. Like, there is not one moment there where they will bullshit you. Like, there is a good 3 Berserker boss fights in Gears 1, I think. Maybe 3 or 4, I'm not entirely sure. But there's 3 that I know of anyway. And not one of them bullshits you the way the Matriarch does in Gears 5. Like, when both of us played Gears UE recently, none of us actually took a single death to the Berserkers. Like, none of us at all. But when it came to the Matriarch fight in Gears 5, we died at least 10 times. And it's not a sign of the Matriarch boss fight being hard, so don't even come out with a get good excuse, right? But it's the case of you don't know where the Matriarch is going to jump, and there is moments where the fucking Matriarch jumps and it lands on you, and there is absolutely no sign that it's going to land anywhere close to you. It just out of nowhere jumps, boom, lands on top of you, one shot death. It's not even like the Berserker in Gears 1, where if you're playing co-op and it downs you, it downs you. See, if you're playing solo in Gears 1, the Berserker runs at you. You basically just blow up into meaty chunks. But if you're playing on co-op, it downs you. But the Matriarch fight in Gears 5, it straight up one-shot kills you. It's like, come on man, that is some absolute cheese right there. Like, it's just, they wanted to emulate the Berserkers as much as they could with this boss fight, but it is just a much more inferior version of it, and I really don't like it at all. It is the absolute worst part of this game, without doubt. There has been boss fights in Gears of War history that have been bullshit before, but this takes the cake for the absolute worst boss fight that I have ever played in my life. I have not played another boss fight that is quite as bad as this one. It's poorly designed, it's badly thought out as well. The fact that when you are playing as Kate, you get these stupid bullshit visions halfway through the fight. When you're playing co-op, it ends up getting one of the players killed. Like, I'm not even joking you, but the amount of times, because I refused to play Kate on the last playthrough, because I played her once when I played the single player campaign, and I was like, she annoys the fuck out of me, I just don't like Kate at all, she just reminds me of Rey from fucking the new Star Wars sequels. But anyway, I didn't like playing as Kate, so I wanted to play as Del, and then my girlfriend's playing as Kate, right? So the amount of times she died because she kept getting these bullshit visions halfway through the fight, and you don't even know what the Matriarch is when you get these visions. It's like, man, come on, this stuff is just insane. Like, who comes up with this shit, you know? It's just really infuriating, a really frustrating chapter of the game. As I said, the campaign is really good, aside from this boss fight and the open world levels. Like, they could have had a banging campaign if they removed this shit. And even if they just made the Matriarch fight a little bit better, like, remove the one-shot kills, have it just down you, that would make it so much better, man. Like, in all honesty, it's not the worst thing that I have ever encountered in a video game ever. I've seen worse shit than this before, but it is pretty fucking bad, and it's pretty inexcusable as well. But anyway, man, that's all I've really got to say about it. There's not much else about the game that is bad. It is solid enough aside from that, but you know what, it doesn't drag it down having this Matriarch boss fight or the open world chapters in the game. But you know, it is a wee bit of a drag when you play it, and it's something that I'd like to see them improve upon for Gears 6. In all honesty, I am pretty excited to see what they come out with this next game. I don't know, as I said, if they're going to come out with another trilogy after this one wraps up, or if they're going to have a definitive conclusion to the end of Gears 6. Who knows? It's up to the Coalition. I guess we'll see in a couple of years' time. It'll probably be about 2022 by the time we see Gears 6, I reckon, or maybe 2023. Depends on where they are at with development right now. You've got to assume that this lockdown has pumped the brakes on it big time. So I guess we'll see what happens eventually with the way Gears of War cycles usually work. We got Gears 4 in 2016, I think it was. 2016, I'm pretty sure. And we got the last one in 2019, so we can assume that we're going to see it in 2022, or it might be later at this point. I'd like to see them take a wee bit more time if that's going to help them polish out some more things in the game. But in all honesty, man, it's a decent enough game. The campaign's really good. Like, there's not much bad with it other than what I've said. It's a decent enough entry. It's not the worst, but it's not the best either. That's definitely for sure. It doesn't top Gears 2 for me. Considering it is the second game in the Coalition trilogy, you'd think it would maybe live up to Gears of War 2, considering that's the second game in Epic's trilogy. But who knows, man. Well, I guess we'll see what they do with Gears 6. I'm hoping it's going to be a banger, but I'm assuming they can do a decent enough job with it. So yeah, hope you boys have enjoyed the video, and leave your opinions in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to slap a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. I'll post some more Gears 5 content on this channel soon. It's just a bit of a hard game to cover in terms of content, because you've got guys like SAS Shadows. It's basically the Ali of the Gears of War series, and like, that guy basically sits and sweats Twitter all day. I'm not exactly on that kind of stuff, so I don't know, man. I'll post some more content whenever I find out some more information about the game. So yeah, hope you boys have enjoyed the video. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day, boys. Stay safe, everybody. Peace.
Man, that was nasty. Bring it on, sucker. This my kind of shit. Bring it on, sucker. This my kind of shit. Bring it on, sucker. This my kind of shit. Bring it on, sucker. This my kind of shit. I'm in the zone, baby. Oh yeah, I got enough for all of y'all. Ain't enough freaks to stop this man.